Hi, my name is Russell Milburn, and this is my second video blog for IDS 403, Preparing for the Future. This review of the concept of identity was actually really interesting to me. Now, it's not something that's new to me in general, because both in the military and in my current job, I've always had to keep both a personal and professional lives and keep them separate. The me that my coworkers see is not necessarily the real me. It's the curated me that I allow them to see when necessary. I just never really thought about this in terms of the digital environment. Now, I'm a very private person, so I've never really felt comfortable with social media and the concept of shaping digital identity. So I don't really get into the Twitter and Snapchat social media platforms. I stick with the less work-intensive social media like Facebook and LinkedIn. But even though I have a limited online presence, I realize I do actually create separate identities for each of those purposes. Now, for Facebook, I post pictures of my children for my parents to see, as well as pictures of my woodworking projects for my friends. While this is a version of my true identity, I edit out many of the negative or mundane parts of my life, making sure that my parents are only seeing their happy and successful son and their beautiful and happy grandchildren. Now, that's not to say my personal life is bad in any way. It's just my digital self is an edited version that I want them to see. My professional digital identity is a lot the same way. It's a representation of who I am, but it's edited through the filter of what's professionally acceptable and what's related to my career. Technology allows me to express the different parts of myself and edit out the parts that each specific group wouldn't find appropriate. It allows me to create a separate identity tailored to each one of those individual groups. I'm not actually lying or making up a completely false identity. That would be difficult to maintain. What I'm doing is I'm shaping my current identity to match what I want to show that group. Now, the problem I see in this is that as technology helps me to start identifying and shaping the identity that I want, I might actually start to change my real world self to more closely align with the digital identity that I'm creating. I have to ask myself some critical questions. Does this action actually change who I am? Am I starting to change myself simply to support the specific digital identity? I do think the creation of these digital identities is definitely a product of the social and technological context that we live in. Now, these filter identities, they would probably still exist without technology, the ones that I've created for my extended family and work environments. I mean, I would guess that people have been telling their mother-in-laws that everything is fine for many generations before Facebook, whether through the use of phone or old-fashioned snail mail. What technology does give me is access to an entire new group of individuals, or new group of people and identities, and allows me to create an identity with less risk of each of those identities bleeding over into the other. I can assume the identity of a woodworker and join a discussion group with like-minded individuals from somewhere as far off as New Delhi. Now, they don't need to know my entire identity, have no need to know about my family, but they just need to know about the parts of me that relate to our shared hobby. Now, the shaping of these online identities is most definitely a performance on my part. While very few would want to create a completely fictional identity, the development of these digital identities starts with an image of what we want to be or what we think others expect us to be. We then craft our online performance to create that identity that we want. As Mr. Rayner said in his blog about Falcott and social media, we set up our own virtual panopticon effects when we believe that our digital identities are public. We believe that, or when we believe we're always watched, we cater our behavior to match what we believe the watchers would want to see. It's interesting to think of how long it's actually going to take before the behaviors that we're developing in our digital identity start to bleed over and become habits in your real world identity. All right, so the focus of what we consider the key elements of our lives that we are putting into our digital identities could have some serious effects on our sense of self. As I'm editing out the uninteresting parts of myself to curate a digital identity, at what point do I start to ignore those parts in real life? At what point do I start to believe my own hype, as it were? I like to consider myself a good father, but heck, if you look at my Facebook, I'm an amazing father. My kids are always happy and healthy and doing something interesting and educational. But if anybody's a parent, anybody who is a parent knows that that's only really a small portion of reality. But if I spend enough time comparing the real me to the fake versions of my identity that I've established in my digital identity, at what point do I start questioning my real identity's worth? I think in general, technology allows us to establish these digital identities as an extension of what we already do in person. The issue is going to come when people spend too much time creating and maintaining these digital identities, losing sight of their real identity, or if they divide themselves into too many digital identities to effectively maintain control over them. As usual, I think moderation and the ability to evaluate your own actions critically are essential to keeping a healthy set of both real-world and digital identities. So that's it for this week's blog. Until next time, thank you for listening.